здорово. Ну вот это единственное. Доброго. Ну, даже. Nipanuk. Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you man. Hey. Bene appreciato. Bene appreciato. Who joined me? Well done. What are these? What are they doing? Very good. You're saying here. Gracianto. Normal. Вот это и было, но только сегодня. А, а, ну нет, ну. Hey, where is my car? Where is my... Наоборот. Даже, да. Удар в набуде. Open up. Camera is open. Camera is open. Camera rebobo. Rebobo. Говорю, есть там говорю. Ну, Ребобо. Вот. А, добавить дела, это бугор. Ну, это... Да. Maratович, ну вот это вот.
Это был непростой год. Но каждый раз, когда нам удавалось находить маленькие разы, становиться чуть веселее. Не забывайте дурачиться о Новом году, каким бы он ни был. Дарим 500 рублей баллами за покупку топ-товаров только в новом приложении AliExpress.
Как часто нужно заниматься английским, чтобы говорить на нем?
Каждый день, но по чуть-чуть. Достаточно 15 минут пару раз в день. Если ты будешь заниматься каждый день, немножко будет такой же эффект, как у тех, кто уехал за границу, то есть погружение в язык.
Я все понимаю, но сказать ничего не могу. Что делать?
Это называется языковым барьером или синдромом собаки, когда ты сказать ничего не можешь, но при этом
как
все понимаешь. Лечится это только одним количеством раз, когда тебе нужно поговорить на английском языке. Каждый следующий раз языковой барьер будет уменьшаться.
Боюсь потратить время впустую на английский. Как правильно его учить?
Чтобы не терять время на поиски правильных методик, действенных способов в изучении английского, просто запишись на мой бесплатный вебинар по ссылке внизу. Всего за 2 часа я расскажу, как правильно учить английский, чтобы заговорить на нем всего за 2 месяца. Регистрируйся по ссылке внизу и до встречи.
I'm back to talk about a new preprint. It's out now. It's the same investigators who are the author of the Nature Medicine paper in the United Kingdom looking at rates of myocarditis after vaccination with ChAdOx2, Pfizer, Moderna, and infection with the virus. They have compared those rates before. We've talked about it on this channel. I've showed you the figure from their Nature Medicine paper. Well, on Twitter, they naturally got many questions about their paper. And one of those questions was, please break this apart by sex. We all know the increased risk of myocarditis, most pronounced after vaccination, is in men rather than women, particularly men under the age of 40, particularly men 16 to 24. That's the peak age group. Well, they're back. They have a new preprint out, back by request, and I will just show you the figure. I'm going to put it up here on the screen. It'll lean over so I can put it up there. This is the figure, and it shows really clearly that when you look at myocarditis just in this group, men under the age of 40, it is crystal clear. Pfizer, dose 2, Pfizer, dose 3, Moderna, dose 1, Moderna, dose 2, have rates of myocarditis greater than the rate of myocarditis post-SARS-CoV-2 infection. That's it. These vaccines, these doses, dose 2 Pfizer, dose post-SARS-CoV-2 infection. That's it. These greater Moderna, dose 1, Moderna, dose 2, have rates of myocarditis greater than the rate of myocarditis post-SARS-CoV-2 infection. That's it. These vaccines, these doses, dose 2 Pfizer, dose 3 Pfizer, dose 1 Moderna, dose 2 Moderna, and the ChAdOx, which I'll set aside because we don't use that in this country, that's used in the UK. But the mRNA vaccines, dose 2, dose 3 Pfizer, dose 1, dose 2 Moderna, have rates of myocarditis in men under 40 that exceed the rate of myocarditis after natural infection. That's an important point. That's a vastly important point. This paper, of course, it's still an underestimate. The denominator for vaccines is known. It's the number of vaccines you put in an arm. The denominator for infection, here they're using people who have tested positive in the system, but that's not everyone. We all know there are people who have gotten sick with this virus who didn't seek testing, and they're not going to be in the denominator there. As you add those people in the denominator, that number is going to get smaller. That red bar is going to shrink a little bit. Okay? That's just what's going to happen. Someday they might affect that. The other thing they're not doing here is they're not separating out 12 to 15, 16 to 18, 19 to 22. I'd love to see that kind of separation because I suspect, and I believe there's a lot of data that supports this, that 16 to 24 will be the peak demographic, will be the most unfavorable there. What does this mean? I think this is incredible information. It's information we should have. It's information that's going to, I think, irritate some people who've been saying the precise opposite, but it's information that I think is necessary, and I wish that they hadn't have said those things that they had said, that infection has to have a higher rate of myocarditis. It doesn't have to. There's no have-tos in this world. You need to look at the data in a sober and empirical way. What does this mean? I think it means a few things. One, we have now seen in this country that there is a push for boosting 16 and up. We need to acknowledge that there is market uncertainty in that age group of 16 to 35 to 40 men, what the risk-benefit balance of dose 3 is. We don't yet have robust data showing that the dose 3 in that group can further lower risk of hospitalization, which is already quite low from the first 2 doses, and how to weigh that against the risk of myocarditis, which is naturally going to occur with dose 3. I think that's a very difficult regulatory gamble. I've written about that on my Substack many times and in other places on MedPage Today, etc. And that's a sort of place that we're going to have to keep thinking about. And Waleed Jalad is an excellent person on Twitter to follow, the University of Pittsburgh professor on drug safety. The second thing I think is that we could have done things that I think could mitigate this risk. You know, it doesn't have to be all the vaccines all the time at whatever schedule the company devises, or no vaccine ever. It can be something sensible in between. Try to get the best benefit of the vaccines and mitigate the harm of the vaccines. What might that mean? If we had invested in spacing out dose 2, if we had invested in preferring Pfizer over Moderna in men under the age of 40, if we had rethought a little bit about the evidence we want for boosters and maybe think about boosters a little bit differently in young men, these are all sensible things a society can do, and they're things that other societies have done. Germany has suspended the use of Moderna in men under the 40. Other countries have extended the time interval between doses, such as is going on in Norway. And we have data from the Canadian group that looks at myocarditis when you extend the dose, and it appears that dose extension is associated with, I can't say it's causal because it's a non-causal paper, associated with a reduction in myocarditis rates. Finally, the US FDA, they have a clear, easy safety correction they could make, and that is Moderna in men under 40, no. Let's prefer Pfizer. Let's just say Pfizer is the de facto in men under 40, not Moderna. Don't say they're equal. Say Pfizer's preferred. That will lower the rates of myocarditis in that group. That will improve outcomes for those people. You took a long time, FDA, to get your J&J situation straight, which now J&J is the second-tier vaccine officially by guidance. It is we prefer Pfizer, we prefer Moderna, then J&J. We can correct this right now. We can correct it at the FDA level, we can correct it at the CDC level. There are 2 ways it can be corrected. These data are of immediate interest. They are of vital interest. I mean, I think it's important to correct, I think, a misconception, a unique type of misinformation, because it's misinformation that serves what is thought to be an honorable goal, and so it's tolerated. That misinformation is that the virus will always cause more myocarditis than the vaccine. Simply not true. The UK data shows conclusively for dose 2, dose 3 Pfizer, dose 1, dose 2 Moderna, it's absolutely not true in men under 40. The rates of myocarditis after the vaccine are higher than after the virus. If you make the corrections that we thought should be made, it might even look even worse. What does this mean about the choice? And I think people struggle with this. They say, well, of course, myocarditis is not the only thing that the virus can do. Of course not. And myocarditis is the most salient concern for mRNA vaccines, or particularly for men under the age of 40, yes. So how do you weigh these things? And I think every time you do an analysis, you have to say, you know, having had 1 dose, what is the potential delta benefit for the second dose versus the potential delta adverse events for the second dose? Having had 2 doses, what's the potential delta benefits from the third dose versus the potential delta AEs for the bad dose? You know, what's the change in adverse events? What's the change having had the 2? And that's a difficult calculus, especially when you don't have lots of randomized controlled trials with a lot of people in that age group. What we do have is Israeli data, which I think is quite compelling. It's in the New England Journal of Medicine. But that Israeli data, by their own admission, the authors say that the event rates are very scant in younger ages, making it very difficult to come up with point estimates for what is that additional benefit from boosters in those younger ages. So thus we have a dilemma, which is how does one weigh, I think, more precise estimates of vaccine safety events against more...
Team City will help you to get started with continuous integration for free. Every big thing starts small, but today's small is different from yesterday. Front end, back end, mobile, security, privacy. With
tenuous and more unreliable estimates of vaccine efficacy as one moves down the booster train at different ages and based on different comorbidity patterns and by different sexes. And I think then you've got a tricky regulatory question. You've got a tricky question in terms of medical science, in terms of medical policy. And something that I like to spend a lot of time thinking about. We publish a lot of papers in this space, and it's easy to be seduced by a poll that more is always better, push the dose, push frequency, it's got to be good. In fact, that's almost the mantra of medical oncology for many decades, is that's always the right answer, and that's what a lot of people are gravitating to when it comes to vaccine science. It's also easy to frequency, it's got to be good. In fact, that's almost the mantra of medical oncology for many decades, is that's always the right answer, and that's what a lot of people are gravitating to when it comes to vaccine science. It's also easy to succumb to another poll, which is none of them are necessary at any age, which is also, I think, a very indefensible position, and dangerous. And then there's the sensible middle ground where we used to all live, but it's harder to find people here. It's called sensible middle ground, where what you do is you maximize the benefits of vaccine products. You try to minimize the downsides or harm. When you're alerted to an AE, and that AE appears to be in the same ballpark or greater than the risks of bad outcomes from the illness itself, you immediately put all your attention on that, try to generate more credible data, and try to clarify that space. That's not what we see going on right now. It's what we ought to be doing. I think this is a huge and tenuous issue. It's a very important issue. What's at stake, of course, is the current pandemic. What's going to happen in the next few months? That's at stake. Naturally, that's at stake. What's also at stake? I think the future of public trust in science. Probably 20, 25 years, it'll probably be that sort of generational lag. And any poisoning of that trust, any error here, if you make a regulatory gamble, you turn out to be wrong, you turn out to actually have recommended something that's a net decrement for some people, you're going to pay the price. And that price is not just a short-term price, it's a longer-term price. And that longer-term price is very difficult to measure, but can be quite catastrophic. And loss of trust, I think, is an incalculable harm. It does harm not only in the short term and the long term. Unfortunately, the places I think I've been most critical of our policy has been the places where I feel like people are betting with future trust, and that's trust that they don't have the right to bet with. And by them betting with it, they're going to make it a harder situation for other people down the road. So these are my thoughts on this paper. It's a very important paper. I think it does show and does dispel a misinformation myth that is sadly an accepted one, which is that the virus always produces more myocarditis than the vaccine. Clearly, that's not the case. It's not the case for dose 2, dose 3 Pfizer. It's not the case for dose 1, dose 2 Moderna. Moderna has way more myocarditis than Pfizer. Moderna has more myocarditis than infection itself. And this is infection, I think, largely assuming that you've not gotten any of the vaccines. What is the trade-off between getting that extra dose, the Moderna booster in this country, versus the risk of bad outcomes were you not to get the Moderna booster if you're a 16-year-old man? I think that's a very uncertain proposition. It's a proposition we need to think about more carefully. I don't see anyone thinking about it clearly. So, those are my thoughts. Important paper. Good for these people, actually. December 14th, they put out their Nature Medicine paper. They got some feedback online, and by request, they already have the preprint out. Good for them. These UK investigators, you did a good job. You're doing the public service, actually, reporting some useful information in a time of crisis, even though many people might not like that information because it conflicts with their preconceived biases and narratives, and they're not looking at the issue empirically, they're looking at it emotionally. And these paper, they got some feedback online, and by request, they already have the print out. Good for them. These UK investigators, you did a good job. You're doing the public service, actually, reporting some useful information in a time of crisis, even though many people might not like that information because it conflicts with their preconceived biases and narratives, and they're not looking at the issue empirically, they're looking at it emotionally, and that's always a recipe for foolhardy medical decisions. So, this is what you get on this channel. You get technical, appraisal, medical information by somebody who is an associate professor of epidemiology and biostatistics, who's been doing this for quite some time and published a few hundred papers on this topic. And see this as an objective scientific issue. It's not an emotional issue. It's not an issue we need to, think about. It's an issue we need to look at the data soberly and make the best assessment. And there's a central area, like I say, called sensible medicine. It's where many of us have been living and practicing for many decades. And I know that the internet is really focused on extremes, but sensible medicine, we're gonna be back in style someday. We're gonna be back in vogue. People are gonna love us in sensible medicine. They're gonna say, hey, you know what? There's some nuance here. There's some trade-offs. There's some sensible medicine. There's some middle ground. We're gonna be back in vogue. So, you know what to do. Like this channel, like, subscribe, comment, leave a message, hit that bell. Links below to things I talk about. Until next time.
Hi, to today's episode of Canada TV. I'm Alicia, your host. I'm a little bit cold today. It's the full suit thing happening here, even though it's only mid-September. And today we are going to be talking about the layering approach to learning. specifically learning piano, because that's obviously what we talk about on this channel, versus something that I refer to as maybe a more block style learning approach. So I want to share with you why I think the layering approach is a lot more effective and just better for your learning overall. Makes things more fun, you'll have a smoother experience learning, even if it is a little bit messier, so to speak, than the block approach. And I'll get into what all this means. These are just insights that I've gleaned from observation.